Your Town Matters is funded by the Government of Canada through the Local Journalism Initiative and supported by Cactus Media, Canada's independent community television association.
I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Meet the Mayoral Candidates for Blacks Harbour on Your Town Matters. Both candidates, Heather Chase and John D. Craig, were sent the questions in advance of their interviews. In keeping with election guidelines, they were both given the same amount of interview time. How they chose to use that time was up to them. Starting in alphabetical order, here is my interview with Heather Chase. Heather, tell us about yourself. What is your backstory?
Well, I think most important to me is I have over 20 years experience working in support of communities locally as well as provincially. Through that time as well, I have 9 years direct experience working with the village of Blacks Harbour. 7 of those years I was the Chief Administrative Officer, so I've been at a number of open holes with waterline breaks and been in every residence in Blacks Harbour at least once, and I've also spent the last 2 years serving as a councillor for the community of Blacks Harbour. I've also studied business as well as community development, and I think most importantly, especially for this position, is I'm actually from Blacks Harbour. So I grew up there and I was fortunate enough that I was able to move back to Blacks Harbour, so it's my chosen home as well.
Why are you running for mayor?
Well, I really believe in being part of the solution, and I think right now Blacks Harbour has a few challenges it's facing, but there's also a number of opportunities that I see on the horizon. So I really wanted to be involved in that, and I am the type of person, if I see a spot where I think I can use my skills and abilities, then I really like to try to step forward and play as active a role as possible. And I just think that what's coming up in the next couple of years in local government in New Brunswick, it's very important that we all are actively involved and understand the process and play as much of a role as we can in providing input and dealing with the outcomes.
In your opinion, what are some of the most important issues facing Blacks Harbour right now and why?
Well, I think just to touch on the local governance piece, as everyone knows, hopefully, the province of New Brunswick right now is undergoing a municipal or a local government review. And based on those outcomes, how we run our municipal governments or local governments could change greatly. So I think that it's very important that we play an active role in that process, especially for a small community like Blacks Harbour, where we have under 1,000 people and our tax base is smaller. Depending on the model that we go with, we could, become part of a rural community or a regional community. And I mean, Blacks Harbour will always still be Blacks Harbour, but I think that it's important that we have strong voices at the table to advocate on the best interests of our residents. I also think fiscal responsibility and sustainability is very important. Unfortunately, for the last 6 years, the village of Blacks Harbour has suffered a tax base decrease. And what that means is that you're bringing in less revenue at a time when costs are going up. So your choice is either to cut service or increase tax. So trying to balance that is always a challenge because nobody likes to cut services. So we want to try to maintain a level where most people still find it affordable to live in Blacks Harbour while maintaining some level of service. And I also think right now one of the biggest issues that we have in Blacks Harbour is a lack of a strategic vision. So it's very important, especially with changes on the horizon, that we all work together as a community and council to set that long-term vision so that we can manage the change that comes, whatever it may be.
If elected, what are some of the key steps you would take to make the community a better place?
Well, just following up on my comment around strategic vision, one of the pieces that I always get concerned about is how can the everyday resident participate in the governance and leadership within the community. So when we look at a strategic vision, I think it's very important that that is done through an inclusive and community-based process. So one of the first things I like to do is to establish a Citizens Advisory Council that can provide advice to elected officials as council on key issues or topics that are brought before council and the agenda. I think it's also important through that process that we have very different voices at the table. So to try to make sure we have someone representing our seniors population, our young people, whether it's our service clubs or business community, because we're all part of Blacks Harbour and we all need to play an active role in that. So establishing that advisory council in support of a strategic leadership piece or a leadership vision is one of the first things that I would like to do. And one of the other things I'd like to do is really work on improving communications. And at the end of the day, every issue or opportunity comes down to how open and transparent communication is. And I think that that's an area where we can really improve on and make sure that everyone has access to the information in a timely way and in a way that they understand what's going on and know who to follow up with to confirm information. So I'd really like to see us improve the communication with our residents so that they understand what steps the council is taking. They have a way that they can ask questions and again participate in that process, because at the end of the day we're all taxpayers and we all should be able to understand where our tax dollars are going, why decisions are being made, and although maybe you don't agree with the decision, at least you would understand it.
Here's a fun one. If you had $1 million grant to use any way you wanted in Blacks Harbour, what would you do with it and why?
This is a very fun question. The operational budget for the Village of Blacks Harbour is only about $1.4 million. So $1 million grant with no strings attached would be amazing for our community. So I would really try to look at how we can be strategic with those investments and really invest for the long-term sustainability for our community. So for me personally, there are 3 areas that I would look to invest in, and the first would be housing. No surprise to anyone, especially if they've been following the mayoral interviews, housing is an issue everywhere. Blacks Harbour is no different. So I really would like to use a portion of that funding to support some existing initiatives that we have going on in Blacks Harbour around housing and try to use it as seed money to attract developers, because for rural communities especially, it can be challenging to attract developers and you need to develop the business case for that. So the council in Blacks Harbour has taken some steps to start that process, and we've just completed an initial review of information. So some of that wonderful $1 million could go to actually furthering the work and doing some implementation. I think obviously roads and infrastructure are a key piece. It costs so much to do roads, and there's not always a lot of funding that we can apply for specific pieces of work, and we have a few pieces of road work in Blacks Harbour that would be wonderful to do, but the costs are really prohibitive at this time. So that would let us tick off a few of those top priorities on our to-do list, so that would be nice. And I think the third piece I'd really look at is recreation. Recreation is always a hot button issue, and it should be, because it's important to a number of residents and residents in the neighboring communities as well. So I think that if we could use a portion of that money to look at improving efficiencies in the assets that we already have, using it to help make that organization or that asset more viable, whether it's the Patrick Connors Recreation Complex or working with the New Brunswick Nature Trust with the Pea Point Nature Preserve, I think that when we look at developing a community where we want people to move to and we want our residents to be happy in, recreation is a key part of that, because we also know besides the physical benefits of recreation, there's also a mental health component to that too. So really trying to provide resources and activities that people can participate in a non-cost prohibitive way, I think is really important. But the most important piece with the $1 million windfall, which I would love to receive that check, is that these are my opinions, and it's really important that when we look at charting the course forward for Blacks Harbour, it needs to be a decision of council and community. So if we had an opportunity to spend this money, it's very important that we would get everyone's input on it. And it's always important to remember that the mayor is the head of council but works at the direction of council. So if I were mayor, unfortunately I don't have a magic wand and say, this is what I want to do. But I definitely have opinions as a resident, and I really would encourage us to work forward and grow forward as a community and council together to invest that $1 million in the best interest of everyone.
Okay, we're coming to the end of the interview. You have up to 4 minutes for the last question. Why should people vote for you?
Well, I think that's a very important question, and the first thing I do want to say is I'm very happy this year that there are a number of candidates running, because I think it's wonderful for residents to have choice, and when they listen to and get to know the different candidates, and they can make their decision who they think is who can work in the best interest of the community. So that's always a wonderful thing. I think that with my professional experience, with my background in business and community development, I do have that training to do that type of work, and I have practical experience. So I have worked on many, municipal, provincial, and federal projects before. I've worked on a number of, regional projects and brought them to fruition and secured funding. So I do have practical experience in addition to that training. So that would be one thing. I think with my background, where I have been on council and I've also been a staff person at the municipality, I have a really unique understanding of the issues and opportunities. So, when you have a background where you can look for the last 10 years and think, well, why was it we did that, or what was the context around that decision? When you have that backstory, it really makes it more helpful and easier to understand what we need to do next. And I also think that it's important that we look at engaging with residents that, in a way that makes the most sense to them. And I have spent a lot of time with my professional career working with all different types of people and different ages. So I really try to ensure that when I'm providing information, I'm providing it in a way that makes sense, that people can understand, and then they can do with it what they will. But I do always try to work in an open and honest manner. That sometimes means people might not always like that decision, but the decision always is taken with the best interest of the community. And I think lastly, I really would hope that people would vote for me because they've seen me around the community. They know over a number of years the work that I've put into that community, which is my home. And I'm very experienced with a lot of volunteer organizations. So I've sat on a number of boards. I still sit on a number of boards, but I'm also the type of person who will go out and do a garbage pickup on a weekend. I had served breakfast at the Blacks Harbour School back when we could do that pre-COVID. So I'm always looking for opportunities to serve my community. So I would hope people would vote for me for all of those reasons. My most important thing is that people vote. If they vote for me, that would be super. And if I'm not successful as the mayor of Blacks Harbour, I know I will still continue to serve my community because that's what I do.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Heather.
Thank you, Vicki.
That was Heather Chase. Now here is my interview with John D. Craig. John, tell us about yourself. What is your backstory?
Well, I live in Blacks Harbour now. I'm originally from St. Andrews, and I don't want to spend too much time during the interview to talk about myself, but I do. But my experience should be talked about first, and I do have 11 years as a mayor, and that's here in a bigger town in St. Andrews. 3 years on council and 3 years as a public safety chairperson. So I do have the experience, and I think the job requires experience and it requires somebody to have some kind of background going in. And to this date, I really am the only person really running that has that type of experience. And I think in today's world, we need somebody with experience and somebody with a different view to take charge.
So why are you running for mayor is my follow-up.
Why am I running mayor? A lot of it was because, well, actually, I'm going to back up a step because really the election should have been a year ago. And so things have changed and transpired over the year, and the world has changed a lot over the year. But the reason I ran originally is because I think the area that I live in now, Blacks Harbour, which I call home now, needs new leadership, needs new guidance, and needs new blood. And that's what I want to bring to the table. I want to be able to expand on what we have in the harbor, make it better, and make it so that it's a place for people to want to call home. And that's why I ran originally, and to date that really hasn't changed. And it's a year later, here we are again. There are a few different things that have happened since then, which even made me want to run more. And I'll expand on that. Is that as I've had a lot of people come to me because I worked in the community. I ran a business in the community, which I originally sold, but people know me and they trust me, and they come to me and ask me to run as for the mayor. This is about a year or so ago, and they know my background, they know what I've done in a town this size, and they feel as I did that the town or the village needs new guidance and new leadership. The history of Blacks Harbour, usually in elections like this, it's usually the same people run all the time, and they always get in by acclamation. This is the first time ever that Blacks Harbour has had this many people running for either for council. You have 13 people running for 5 positions. That tells me strongly, and it tells everybody in the village it's time for change. They want a new direction. They're tired of the way that the harbor's been going, and they want a clear direction of the way things are going. And they need a person at the helm that can do that to help the new council, because all the ones that are running are basically all new. They need somebody at the helm that has the leadership, the background to be able to assist them. And that's the reason I ran.
In your opinion, what are some of the most important issues facing Blacks Harbour right now, and why?
Yeah, there's many, and to pick one over the other is very hard. I mean, I'm gonna start at the top. Water is a big issue over there. Probably the biggest issue is the tax base itself. Trying to grow the tax base. If you can get the tax base up, that eliminates a lot of the other problems. Basically, if you can get more people living in the harbour, more housing, more affordable housing, more seniors housing, if you can get that and get that started and get the ball rolling, and for people to be able to stay there. The biggest problem too is seniors moving away from Blacks Harbour because they've sold their homes, but their only type of senior housing is in St. George or St. Andrews, so they're moving, or St. Stephen for that matter, and they're moving away. I want to bring those people back. I want to be able to have housing developments in the village so that people can stay and call Blacks Harbour, continue to call Blacks Harbour the home. If you have more housing, it brings in more money for the village coffers, so that we can do all the other things, to have better recreation, better roads, better sidewalks, and that's what we're in charge of as a municipality, is the basics, what I call the basics of municipal government, and that's what we have to stick to. As a mayor, the mayor's responsibility is to make sure that the councillors stay focused, and make sure what I would do from day one of the first things I would do is ask every councillor, what do you think, because they've been out campaigning too, and I say as I have been, they've been talking to people, and they want to know what the biggest priorities are. I want to know what your priorities are. Let's pick the 3 or 4 top priorities, stick to those priorities, and don't deviate from them, because we have to, in order to get anything done, you have to stick to your priorities, and don't, because as the year goes along, you're going to get pulled in different directions, and we need money for this, we need money for that, but we have to stay in focus to what we have, to the basics, and make sure we grow on that. The arena is a big issue over there, as you know, because a lot of the children from St. Andrews and Blacks Harbour, Beaver Harbour, all the Penfield, all the surrounding areas use that arena, and I'm very disappointed in the government that's there now, the municipal government that's there now. It came out last week, the latest budget. They didn't put any money into the recreation for this coming year. Now, that's what I've been told, that the mayor, the present mayor, released that information this past weekend. That tells me that they have already decided they're going to close the arena. If there's no money in the recreation, they've already made that decision. I don't think it was right. They didn't tell the people of this. And that's one of the other reasons I'm running, because we need openness in government. There's no openness over there. This past winter, there's been a lot of times they've had committee meetings. From the committee meetings, they made decisions and acted on. And then later on, they took it to council to pass it. That's not right. I know the rules of government, and that's not how you run things. The Blacks Harbour lately, that's the way that they've been running government over there, and that's not right. I've told people that. The rules are being broken over there, and that's got to change. I've got off off a little bit, but the arena is very important to the area, and I have a plan for that. And and my plan for that is to form a committee, a separate committee, to oversee the arena complex itself, and report back to council. Instead of council running that, I want a separate committee, and on that committee would be people from all around, not just Blacks Harbour. I don't feel that's the Blacks Harbour Arena. I consider that the fundy arena because people from all outside the areas use it. I feel that we should have people on that committee, a person from every area be on that committee, plus some business people on that committee too, so that we can approach other businesses for extra money for funding for that building. We have people that with business background can go to the different groups and try to get more money and come up with different ideas. And if you have skin in the game, you're going to want to keep that building going. That's the way I feel it. And right now, with the present council not putting any money into it, if you don't put any money into that building, you're not going to get any help from the government, because the government will not help anybody that doesn't want to try to help themselves. So as a village, we have to put money into it so that we can go after provincial and federal funding. And that's what I firmly believe in.
Well, you've already addressed this a little bit.
Actually, now I'm going to tell you something here too, and I'm very, very upset about this. I was out campaigning, and one of the areas, I don't know if you know the geography of the Blacks area. There's one area called Tunaville, and it's an area just on the other side of the village, but it's inside the village, on the other side of the water, and the roads over there are terrible. They let it go for so many years. I took pictures of it when I was out campaigning because every house I went to told me about the roads, every house. So I said, that's my duty. So I took pictures of it and put it on my site where I'm running for mayor. I said, this is wrong. The new council should be dealing with this and trying to get this done. 4 or 5 days later, the present council gets together and makes a decision to put money towards the roads after I brought it forward. I don't know if that's politics or it's something they started, but it's not right. And I think that the people of the Tunaville area were let down for too many years, and they've got to be taken care of. And the rest of the harbor also as well. With sidewalks, I've been told about sidewalks. I have people take pictures of the sidewalks. People out trying to, in today's world, they're trying to get outside their own homes, their own property because of the pandemic, and it's not safe for them because they're out walking, they fall down on the pavements, and the sidewalks is not right. So we have to stick to basics, and the mayor's job is to make sure that the council sticks to the priorities.
You've addressed this quite a bit already, but I'll ask you the next question.
Yeah.
We've got about 4 minutes left.
That's all like
that. Are there any other key steps you would take to make the community a better
here's
place?
one of the first things I would do. One of the very first things I would do, and I made this public to the St. Croix Courier. It's going to be printed today. I'm going to put it out there tomorrow myself. The first thing I'm going to ask for is an audit of the books of Blacks Harbour. I want the village, the new council, to start from day one, knowing where the money's gone the last 5 years and why it went where it went. And I'm going to tell you a couple of reasons why. Number one, the first reason why is they had a village manager just quit a few months ago. Unexpectedly, right out of the blue, just quit. You've had a new manager hired who hasn't come on yet, and you have a new council coming on. Now's the time to look at the books, to see where money's been spent the last 5 years, making sure that money was spent the right way. I believe in accountability. I believe in for the money of the people that pay so much money for taxes. I believe in accountability and openness, and that's one thing we've been lacking in Blacks Harbour, and I will make sure that we have accountability. So I will demand that of the new council to look for a forensic audit, to look at everything, to make sure that we don't get blamed for the past council's mistakes.
Got just over 2 minutes left. If you had $1 million grant to do to use any way you wanted in Blacks Harbour, what would you do with it and why?
The first thing I would do if I had $1 million to help out Blacks Harbour is replace the water pipes in the village. And then I would look for a state-of-the-art water treatment plant to be the water to be treated correctly. Ultraviolet is what I think St. Andrews has. That's what I would look for Blacks Harbour. That's what we need. And through that $1 million, if we don't have quite $1 million, if we use that part of it, then we use the rest of the money to go after the problems and the federal government to help out with that. That's the job of the federal and provincial government, to help us when it comes to safe drinking water. The people of Blacks Harbour deserve that, and that's something I will be fighting for, to make sure we have a good, clean drinking water.
Final question, about 1.5 minutes left. Why should people vote for you?
Well, I guess I'm hoping that people came to me and asked me to run. I'm offering my background, my experience, and my knowledge of how government works. And to this date, the government, municipal government of Blacks Harbour has not been done correctly. I know that for a fact. I've seen it being run. I've had people come to me afterwards and say, how did they do this? I want things to be done correctly. I want things to be open, and I want things to be I want to be accountable, I guess is what I want, and that's why I'm asking people to vote for me if that's what they feel they want to. I guess what I'm asking people is, if you're happy with the last 5 to 10, 12 years, then go ahead and vote for everybody who's been on there before. But if you want change, today is the day to make that change. You got 13 people running. You got a person running for mayor that has a background in it. Now is the time for change, and now is the change is in the people's hands. That's why.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was John D. Craig. Now do your part and get out to vote on May 10th. I'm Vicki Hogarth, and this has been an election special edition of Your Town Matters with the mayoral candidates for Blacks Harbour.